All right, let's welcome back Coach Bart Miller, the offensive line coach at the University of Illinois. Coach, thanks for coming back.
Absolutely, Coach. Glad to be here.
So we're going to talk about a wide range of things. I think we're just going to talk how's the offseason so far this year compared to all the other years because transfer portal's crazy, name, image, and likeness is crazy. Like, how's that been going so far?
It's a great question. It's kind of separated. The offseason is kind of separated into a couple different parts. Number one is recruiting, and that's hectic, chaotic, a nightmare, exciting all at the same time. You know, it's kind of everything rolled into one there, and different than other years because you are dealing with not only this transfer portal, but the recruitment of your own roster as well.
Mhm.
And that's such a new concept for a long time. And when I talk about recruitment of your own roster, it's it's not just going through and making phone calls to your current guys, but it's having that built that constant relationship, constant communication with them, and even in times when, like this typical time in February and January, you might see them during workouts, you might see them coming up on meeting on a couple things, but it's not, you didn't necessarily have daily communication with all 18 of your guys or whatever, right? And
Right.
now that's certainly a big part of it. The portal is everything that's advertised, right? I mean,
Okay.
it's constant communication. It's almost to the point where it's an annoyance, I would think, for some of these kids, because it is their phones are just ringing off the hook, and
Right.
text messages and things of that nature. And then this NIL world that we live in now, it's not going away.
Right.
But I also don't think it has manifested into something I don't think it was intended to be. And I think that's maybe the hardest part of this whole deal is um, people people's value of themselves, or of their children, of their players. I think is kind of through the roof, and there's only so much of those things to go around. You've seen the evolution of the collective,
Mm-hmm.
and how that's played a role in it. And then at least in Illinois, like, we don't, the coaching staff, we're not involved in those conversations. I mean,
No.
as you know, and that's done to protect us, but also, it's the NFL they're trying to make an NFL model without any legislation, and
Yeah.
that's been a very difficult thing to navigate. But everybody's dealing with the same thing, and trying to do that. Now, the one thing that I do think there are benefits to that. You can change your roster quickly, but
Mhm.
it also, you know, people are going to go to some of these players are going to go to the highest bidder, not necessarily somebody that can really develop them. And that's been a frustrating thing, especially for guys like myself and what we've done at Illinois. But our offensive line acumen is pretty high.
Yeah.
Is one of development. I mean, this will be in April. Hopefully, we have two guys get drafted this year. Um, that will be 6 in 3 years here at Illinois, but they'll be my 21st
Okay.
O lineman picked, NFL lineman in 12 years of coaching. So I don't know how many guys have that type of resume, but some of the recruiting battles we get into are with guys that can't even match that, but they can throw
Mhm.
some money at people.
Right.
And it just kind of it's that part's frustrating because the old school way of recruiting and developing relationships, and the development of a player has almost taken a back seat.
Yeah.
Um, but it is an interesting time, and I don't think it's changing. So we're gonna have to continue to evolve and change your style and of recruiting, and go from there. But we were active this year in the portal, so that
Yeah.
was exciting. And then the second phase of the offseason is truly the developmental piece of it, right? The
Yeah.
the the, the lifting and the workouts, and the implementation of your offense, getting ready for spring ball, and that part is still kind of what we all do it for, right? We love the
Right.
game, we love the competition piece, we love the coaching piece of it. I don't think anybody likes offering money or
Mhm.
offering,
Right. Right.
some type of transfer portal deal. I don't think anybody got in this to be an agent. I think everybody got
No.
in this to coach and to change lives and to impact lives and be around the game and help develop people. And so I think that still does exist, but it's just a different landscape now.
I was gonna say you guys don't. I don't think you guys have lost as many players as like other colleges. I think you guys
No.
retain a lot.
Yeah, in fact, some of the guys maybe you want to move on didn't, because they're treated well, and we
Right.
treat our players well, and I think people believe in what we're doing, we had a couple guys leave for the right reasons. I had a player that was kind of buried on the depth chart, and he was a contributor, but I don't never saw him starting here, and I told him that, and he wanted to go play, and we
Uh-huh.
supported that, and because you want the best for these guys and things like that. And that's what it should be for guys that aren't playing, that want to play, that want to drop down a level, and go, right? Or maybe somebody that's out of eligibility, that wants to go, like the Ivy Leagues, for example. You only get
Yeah.
4 years, right? Well, sometimes they need a fifth, or sometimes they want a fifth, and to me, that's what it should be for. It shouldn't be for somebody jumping conference just to get more money.
Right.
That's
Right.
that negates the point of the collegiate sport. And so,
Right.
um, that part is true. We haven't had very many guys leave because I think people believe in what we're doing, and they know they're treated well. And I think the culture of our room, and our team and our locker room too, I think
Uh-huh.
is very strong. And we don't have many discipline issues. We have guys that go to class. It's a great university with a strong degree, a value of degree, and I think a lot of people recognize that.
Yeah. Because I was gonna say you host a great like lineman camp. That's where I met you for the first time. Was a player that played for one of my friends invited me to go watch it. And so the more I think about it, how does that affect high school recruiting? And I've asked college coaches, they say, well, it doesn't necessarily. You just might see less guys go straight to Division 1 Power Five. They said you might see maybe one double A, then go. Now that thumbs up, I didn't do that on purpose. Zoom does it. I don't know why, but that was the only thing was they said it doesn't necessarily affect high school recruiting. It's just maybe not as many get to the Power Five right away as they used to, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess, and it probably depends on the level,
Yeah.
and where your team's at, really. Like, for example, in December, I did all portal recruiting, so I didn't even go to a high school in
Okay.
December, and then in January, I did mostly high school recruiting. So, in years past, that wouldn't have been the case, right? I mean, we'd
Right.
we'd have gone to high schools, and really, my background is I haven't had a lot of junior college players. I haven't had a lot of transfer players, just because that's not usually how I operated. But
Uh-huh.
that's changing, right? And so, and May is kind of the same thing. Like, you're not, the days of like just knocking on doors and like, hey,
Uh-huh.
what do you got this year? That stuff's
Yeah.
kind of over. We're working almost a class ahead, and the camps even, they become combines more than anything, and that
Uh-huh.
that kind of bothers me. I
Uh-huh.
wish that wasn't the case. I wish it was more instructional. I wish it was, and I try to make ours somewhat instructional, but at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you are still trying to find prospects too.
Right.
But that's kind of how things have changed a little bit. Is in your class sizes aren't going to be as big. You're not going to take 25 high school kids. You might take 15 to 18, and then the rest fill in with transfer portals and things like that.
Right.
And it all depends on how your roster is too. Like if you lost players. The other thing that happens is the other thing that's changed, I should say, and this has been in the last 3 or 4 years. Late in the season, if you had one open up, or if you had a couple scholarships, you'd go and maybe pick the next guy on the list, right? As a high school kid, right? Or a late
Right.
developing senior, something of that nature. That's not happening anymore. If you get a scholarship available in December and November or even late January, you're going to go portal more than
Right.
anything.
Right.
And so the guys that really get hurt are those late developing high school athletes that, like you said, might have to go down a level and then transfer back up, right? And so
Right.
it just becomes this. Um, it's almost a game
Yeah.
anymore, and that's not what this was intended to do. That's not what I think college sports should be, but that's unfortunately where we are, and
Uh-huh.
it's true in every sport. Men's basketball is the same way, and
Yep.
um, football and things like that. The other thing that's going to take a significant hit, I think, are the non-revenue generating sports, and I think that's already started to happen. But
Right.
but they're not making. I don't know if they're making any changes now. We're just kind of living by the rules, and so is everybody, and trying to navigate the best you can, and also do it with some integrity.
Yeah.
What little there is still. we
Yeah.
try to operate. We try to operate in, with some honor. So
Yeah. Because asking college coaches are like, well, instead of complaining about it, we might as well just ease into it and just do what we're supposed to do. Like, do it the right way, but then control we can control. If people are offering money, we can't say anything. We can't go do anything. We just kind of have to keep doing what we were supposed to do, if that makes sense. Like we
yeah.
have to,
Well, I think honesty too in this day and age, is the game is what it is, and people need to understand that, right? Like the days of guys play, developing for 4 years and playing their last year. That
Mhm.
that that era is almost over,
Yeah,
because if you're not contributing within 2 or 3 years, most programs are going to want to try to transition you out and get somebody
yep,
else in, right? And it's become a professional model in that
yeah,
light,
yeah,
you know. And I don't know if everybody realizes that, including parents, high school coaches, high school athletes, etc. So that is kind of the new era, and I think most of the guys that recruited and played and had experience in the old way, I think are frustrated, but also understand that that's the way of it. And so, what are you going to do? You got to find the solution, and you got to go do what you're supposed to do. So, like you said, you made a good point. So, that's kind of where, at least my take on it, and kind
yeah,
of how I'm looking at it, and we're moving forward full steam ahead.
yeah. Because like with you as like for O line especially, if you guys want to run a certain offense, but you get like a junior that comes in, do you have to adapt kind of what he is capable of doing, or do you kind of have to try to fit into what you guys do?
Well, that's a good question. At least up front, I'm not going to recruit a guy that's not how that's not maybe not as fit, not very physical, or
Yeah,
he's just a finesse guy. I'm not going to probably go
yeah,
after that type of player, right? If he's the best one, we put him in a position where he can be successful, and of course you play to your player's strengths, but I don't think you know you got a guy that can run, a quarterback. You're not just all of a sudden run the triple option, right? You're still going
right.
to run kind of what you're accustomed to, but you might add some weapons and some wrinkles to it. Up front's kind of the same way. If you like last year, we're not a very good drop back protecting team. That's not what we're recruited to do. But we
Right.
don't want to live in a drop back world. But we have to be able to do it and function, correctly and efficiently. I do think you play to your players' strengths. I do think if you're a guy that you got a big mauling line that operates well in a phone booth, and they run inside zone and gap schemes pretty well, then that's probably what you should stick to from a run
Mhm.
game concept wise, right? And yeah, like 2 years ago when we had Doug Kramer and
Yeah.
Vidarian Lowe and some smaller more athletic guards, Jack Badovinac is a Chicagoland area guy.
Yep.
We were much better at the outside zone.
Yeah.
And this year, and actually last 2 years, we were a little bit better in inside zone and some of the pin pull
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I think you can still stay within the framework of your offense and um, run those concepts that you have traditionally run, but you might put an emphasis on the stuff that is your strength.
Yeah. Because I watch you guys all the time because of course I'm a fan, grew up down there. I noticed that like it was wide zone, and this year I saw a lot of pin pull, a little bit of GT inside zone, and that's
Yeah,
what you guys lived and died by that a little bit.
that's
And
right.
maybe it's a bad thing. I always heard criticism, and where did all the criticism go last year? It was like the O line, and I'm watching. I'm like, no, I mean it's a whole team thing. Like you
Yeah.
said, this team does not look like it's supposed to be a drop back every time, throw. It's run, short passing game, get it going. But I kept hearing all this criticism, and I'm like, why do we keep blaming? Oh my gosh, the announcers blame the O line, and I'm like, you gotta stop blaming them, man. Like it's not, you
Well,
know,
yeah, there's a lot of factors I think that go in. Obviously, in 22, we were a finalist for the Joe Moore Award. I mean, we were one of the
yeah,
best offensive lines in college football.
yeah,
You lost two starters on that line.
right,
So in 2 years, you'd lost four guys that went to the NFL.
yep,
We had a couple guys. Zy Chrysler was one that didn't have an off season since he's been here. He's had surgery both years, and
hmm,
and and so for him to come out of that, he started fall camp, and we're like, okay, this is good. We're gonna be pretty good. But we had two new starters really with Josh Getsky as well, and Josh Kreutz, and we moved Zy out and thought he was gonna be good, and then he sprained his ankle in camp.
Yep.
and we didn't think he was going to get back for the game, and then he did. He got back for the game, but then struggled pretty mightily, right? And
Yeah.
then that first Toledo game, we won the game, but I think at one point we were watching Cubs the other night in the fourth quarter, 4 of the 5 starters were out
Yeah.
of that Toledo game. So you're playing with 4 backups, and we did not have great depth last season,
Yeah.
and so that was kind of an interesting deal. Well, then we go to Kansas, and we're down 21-0 in the first quarter, right? And
Yeah.
and so your strategy changes a little bit,
Mhm.
right? Kansas had a very prolific offense, um, and could basically do whatever they wanted offensively. So we felt like we should need to throw the ball downfield a little bit farther, and we weren't. They got their ears back and kind of exposed some guys. We had a rotating door. That's when we moved Isaiah Adams, who is arguably the
Mhm.
best guard in the NFL or in the college game right now.
Yep.
Took him from what would have been an All-American season at guard and moved him out to tackle. And he's not a tackle. We all know that. Everybody
Yeah.
knows that. But we didn't have a choice, and felt like that was what we needed to do for the team. And he struggled a little bit, but
Mhm.
played well towards the end of the year. And you look at the last half of the year, the last 6 games of the year, we're the number 4 offense in the Big
Mhm.
Ten, and
Yep.
and I think kind of settled down a little bit, right? And you got a quarterback back there. Tommy DeVito got rid of the ball fast,
Yes.
and
Yep.
and Luke was a first time starter, and just kind of implementing that. And then we're doing a lot of drop back stuff. We lost Chase Brown, and so we didn't have a dynamic back. And then the emergence of Caden Fagan later in the year
Yep.
was fun to see, but we had some injuries there too. I mean, there was one point where we had one back. That Minnesota game, we had one back.
Yep.
Caden was the only back we had healthy, and so you look at kind of that. Our injuries and our depth was a concern towards the end of the year, but the last half of the year we played really well offensively. And there's some little things that pop up, and you watch the cut ups, and there's frustration, but there's also elements of God, we're this close, or what if we would, just one more strain, or one more, what if we get this block, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you had a whole offense where you lost basically 7 guys on the team to go to the NFL. They all started at some point this year in the NFL,
Yep.
and then you have to replace with a bunch of guys that hadn't played a lot, and it was a strong conference, and we were in every game, and had a chance to win every one in conference anyway.
Right.
And then really you look at that season and know what we have to address. And I think we got some key pieces coming back. Kane's coming back. We got Aiden Lawford's coming back. Josh McCray, who actually hadn't been healthy for 2 years, is back. You got a returning quarterback that actually has a year under his belt now, knows where his deficiencies were up front, know where our deficiencies were. We were active in the portal. We got a couple good guys coming in, and then we have some young freshmen that are here already that I'm excited about. So the depth that we're building is exciting there. And then it's another year under the offense with returning starters, and we didn't lose a ton of production. We did on the edge, but we got. I think we're pleased with where we are up front and in the running back room. And so you look at that, and it's like you said, it's kind of a team thing. And it's not just on the O-line, and we don't really listen to that criticism much, just because of you can't in this profession, obviously. But
Right.
People how quickly they forget we were one of the top 5 O-lines in the country. We didn't just forget how to do things, right? I mean, there's some growing pains there, and hopefully we've got those figured out and we're rolling forward.
Yeah, because unfortunately I hear it. You're watching the game, and unfortunately I have to hear it.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, I'm blessed to be able to talk to like you and other college coaches and understand that these announcers obviously may not know everything. They're just, and everything getting compared to last year. And I'm like, this is not the same team. It has to be approached differently. And like you said, one of the best O-lines in the country the year before. You have good pieces there. It's just when they keep getting moved or have to be moved, obviously, as we all know, being O-line coaches or played O-line, it takes a moment to gel. You're not just up there like, just
absolutely. The continuity in the chemistry has to be on point with that position, and we were still 67% efficient on inside zone, that's a hard thing to do. And, again, I think we're one of the better inside zone running teams in the country. And you also had a freshman back that could run over guys, but also got what was blocked, whereas Chase Brown, made some big time moves and stuff like that. And I think that's what you're going to see with Caden and Aiden and Josh moving forward, is these guys that are growing into becoming big time collegiate backs, and then I'm really impressed with a couple guys we got coming into the off season. Some of the transfer portal guys we got, and then some of these young guys that are growing. And I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm as excited as I've been for a spring ball since I've been here, and it's because of some of these pieces we have. And I think it's because of some of the trials and tribulations and growing pains we went through last year, knowing what we can do when we're clicking. And so I'm excited to see what we can do this spring.
Because was there like you might have said this, was there like a ton of frustration last year, obviously from not getting back to where you guys were, but it seemed like more guys from the outside looking in, like there was frustration of not winning, but it was still seemed like you guys were still together, like you still stuck through it throughout the whole
Yeah.
year.
Oh, sure. Well, you look at that. I mean, look at if you have a problem in that room, we would have had guys transfer, right?
Yeah.
We'd have had uh, Zai, Getsky, Kreutz, right? Like those guys would all Isaiah.
Hmm.
They would have been like, no, we're out, and they didn't, and they stayed. They stayed true. They believe in what we're doing. I think they appreciate the grind that we go through. I think they know they're being coached well. I think they know they're part of a line that has the potential to be one of the best again in the country. And I think when you have that, you have good things, right? You can build on things, right? Like there's a unfinished business kind of mentality. There's
Hmm.
a not I don't know if frustration is the word, but they're not satisfied. They can't be satisfied, but I think they realize where they can improve. And you look back on some of these cut ups, and it's pretty humbling, right?
Hmm.
To watch it again. But then in that same breath, you have a play where you're burying the three technique from Iowa right on the goal line. There's an
Hmm.
unbelievable play on the goal line in Iowa where we score our first touchdown. And I mean, it's as clean of a flat back pancake as there is.
Yeah.
And Iowa's the best defense in the Big Ten and one of the best defenses in the country, bar none, right? And
Right.
so you see some of that, right? I think they know our emphasis on physicality. They know, despite our record and despite the disappointment, and nobody's happy with 5-7, least of all this
Hmm.
coaching staff. And but I think if you talk to everybody we played, they know they played a physical team when they played
Right.
us, and I think that's been true since Coach B and our staff has been here. But the mentality, those guys believe in it. They know they have to get better, and I think that you don't quit on things. And that's our mindset, and our players' mindset is they know there's more there. They know they can play better. They know we can coach better, right? And um, guys don't quit on that.
Mhm.
There's a pride that comes with this position, and I
Right.
think that when you're playing this position or coaching this position, and you realize that you know you maybe underperformed or can be better, there's a need and a motivation to go do so. And I think
Right.
that's where we are right now.
Which, like you said at the very beginning, you don't see that sometimes now in this world. Like if they could have
Right.
taken the door and said, you know what, I blame everybody else. I'm going to go here, and then
That's
maybe,
right. Like, screw this, screw coach,
yeah,
I'm out.
yeah,
And it's like, no, 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 no. Look at this. I need to be better than that.
right.
Right. And that's a testament to the guys that we've recruited. It's a testament to the culture that, Tank Wright and his strength staff and Coach B, our whole staff, that we've kind of embedded in
Mhm.
these guys, is that um, you can't run from your problems. The mountain doesn't. We always talk about the mountain doesn't care in our room, right? Like, and
Right.
the idea behind that is if you're a mountain climber, the analogy of a mountain climber, you don't care. That mountain doesn't care that you're cold or you're sore or you're tired or your buddy just fell, right? It's trying to do is defeat you. All it's trying to do is kill you. And
Mhm.
you have a choice to make, right? You can tuck tail and run, or you can look up that thing and charge up it, right? And that's kind of where you are, right? At the end of a season, you look at that and you look at where you can improve, what you need to do better. You're at base camp, right?
Mhm.
You got to take off and go, right? You didn't make it up. Now we have to continue to climb. And I think that there's a mentality that a lot of guys take, right? Whatever analogy you want to run with that it's that mentality of I can be better, and this is what I'm going to do to make myself better. And when you have a team that thinks like that, a team of competitors, um, you're going to have success.
Right.
And you might not win every game, but you're going to absolutely be in every game and have a chance to win every game. And that's, I think, where this program is headed and has been. And that's that's our goal is to continue to elevate the caliber of football that is associated with Illinois.
Well, and that was the other thing is because people are talking about Illinois, now everybody knows, right? They were, even though I heard all the criticism, they're Illinois basketball, football, everything's being talked about nationwide, right? Because of
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
season. So now, even though there's criticism, I guess that's a positive. Like, hey, everybody's looking at us. Like everybody notices because we can be. We weren't. You guys weren't a lot of games last year in conference. Like it was right
Yeah.
there. So now it's to finish, but you're being talked about on a national stage now all the time. So I think that's actually good for recruiting and it's good for the players too.
Absolutely. Well, we've raised expectations, right? And it's
Yeah.
like it to the point where it's not just being competitive in these games anymore. It's the expectation of winning these games. And
Yes.
in 22, you had that run where we at one point we're 7-1 or top 13th in the country.
Yeah.
And you beat Wisconsin, you beat Iowa, you beat Minnesota in 3 consecutive weeks, Nebraska, right? I mean
Yeah.
that's kind of a murderer's row in the old Big Ten West.
Right.
And we were able to beat them and beat them. I don't know if you necessarily blew them out, but the game was not in contention, right? I mean, we were in control, and that was the expectation. And then you go into this game or this season, and we're up 21-7 in the fourth quarter at Wisconsin, right? And we beat Minnesota for the third year in a row, right? We're beating Iowa with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, right? And so you're in those same games, you're in those same results. We just didn't close them out. And you can point to a lot of different factors, and we have as a staff, we've addressed all those and watched them almost to nauseum of how much we spent on those games and what we could have done better as a staff and things of that nature in those games, because that's where that's what our fans expect and deserve. That's what our staff expects, what our players expect and deserve, right? Is to win those games, and that's what you're going to have to do in this conference. And it's not getting any easier with the addition of Oregon and USC and UCLA and Washington, right? I mean, so you look at 3 of those teams are top 15 nationally, right?
Right.
And so it's not going to get any easier as this conference continues to grow or whatever happens. The landscape of college football continues to go, but you're right there. But now we have to finish them. We have to win, and
Right.
you're right. And from a national standpoint, it is taking hold. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, coaches given us some time, and I've taken my family I've been in the Keys in Florida. I've been in Arizona. I've been kind of everywhere, and I wear an Illinois hat or I have an Illinois shirt on, and I get ILL all the time.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's awesome.
it is awesome. It almost takes you by surprise because you don't expect it down in
Right.
Islamorada or wherever else. And sure enough, someone will come up to you and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm an '89 graduate," or I was in Albuquerque recruiting. I'm on an elevator, and a guy gets off. He didn't say anything, and then as he's leaving, he looks at me and goes, "Hey, ILL." I'm like, "Oh, hey,"
Yeah.
And it's just like there's fans everywhere. There is a national brand that continues to grow. Obviously, our basketball team has really carried that banner for the better half of this century. But I think the 22 year last year was exciting. I think people had high expectations going into this year, and they should continue to have high expectations, right? And continue to support this team because it's how you build a reputable brand. You're not going to win the
Right.
conference every year, but you're going to be competitive and build this thing the right way, and make fans proud of Illinois and proud to support it and come to see it. And you're going to see good football. You're not going to see lopsided losses in Memorial Stadium or anywhere else. Like, you play Illinois football, you're going to be in a fight,
Right.
and you hopefully you win most of those, right? But
Right.
that you have to learn how to do that and know how to do that, and that's kind of where we are with our team right now.
Well, that happened to me when Illinois went to the championship game in basketball. We went
Oh
to
yeah,
Florida right after, where my dad has like an Illinois shirt on. I think I had a hat on, and everybody's like, Illinois, Illinois, and you're in Florida. And it's like, oh, so they know Illinois. And then if it's down, nobody talks about it. But like when Illinois is up there, everybody talks about it. And like you said, you'll find out real quick. Oh, I went to U of I, or my grandpa went to U
yeah,
of I, and it's just
dude,
all
yeah,
over. Even the
yeah,
Chicago area, they're up here. There's signs everywhere for Illinois now that were never there before. Like
right.
I think I saw Illinois football and it says, "Hey, University of Illinois." It's popping up everywhere up here. Like in Rosemont, I saw stuff and it's all over.
Well, and we get, we get invited, not invited, but the reception you get in high schools in Illinois is much greater now, and
Yeah.
There's even some guys that are mad because we didn't offer their kid or whatever it is, and that's a good thing. They want their kids to come here. They want their kids to play here, and the state school, it still means something, even in an area like Chicagoland where there's 10 million people in the Chicagoland
Yeah.
area, and it's a kind of a melting pot of every Big Ten school, right? And
Right.
yet we still have a very strong presence, and there still is that in-state pride and things of that
Mhm.
nature. And we've been able to crack into some other states, right? We've been able to crack into Indiana. We've been able to crack into Wisconsin, Michigan, right? We have a kid that signed with us this year that was committed to Michigan State, right, and flipped. And there's that stuff was never happening 4 years ago, and
Right.
now I think we're in every fight, and I think we're pretty pleased with where that brand is going, and we need to continue on that trajectory, right? And hopefully our basketball team takes care of business today and
Yep.
continues to do well in the postseason, and then football we get off to a really strong start and have another good year.
Yeah. Anytime I see pictures of any of you guys at a high school in Illinois, everybody on Twitter is excited. They're like, look at this. They're in high schools. They're taking pictures. They're everywhere. I
Yeah,
know you guys call every head coach around, and our head coach gets phone calls and emails, and he's like, "Look, Illinois is on top of it." And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's great. It's fantastic.
yeah, and I think you have to be in state, and now the way we operate too is a little bit different. I mean, in this era of recruiting too, there's a lot of teams, especially out of state teams, that can throw an offer out there and maybe not honor it, or they just
Hmm.
offer to get in or whatever, and they don't really actively recruit it or whatever. And we can't do that.
Hmm.
So we're not going to offer somebody in Illinois that we wouldn't accept their commitment, right? I
Right.
mean, it's real here, and so that because of that, we're much more cautious, I think, in
Yeah.
state. And a lot, like I told you before, a lot of times it depends on the size of the class. This next class is going to be pretty small by our
Yeah.
normal standards, right? So we're going to be very careful with the volume of offers that we
Hmm.
extend. But just because we're not offering doesn't mean we're not interested. Doesn't mean we're not looking at it. We're not, ready to go. Because here's the other thing too: in this portal world, let's say that particular player goes to a Western Michigan or a Central Michigan or Northern Illinois or whatever, and in 2 years' time they want to transfer. Well, we've developed a relationship. Maybe out of high
Right.
school we didn't offer, but we
Right.
developed a relationship. We have registered with the high school coach. You would at least known us. Now we're involved in it, and that's kind of the new era as well, right? That's kind of how it's changed too. Is you're not wasting your time on just because the guy's not a Big Ten player yet.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean he's not gonna be, right?
Right.
And so that's another thing that has kind of changed as we were talking. I thought about that. So
Yeah. Well, I saw that in basketball. They got that player from Oregon to coach Underwood. He had recruited him out of high school and kept in touch with him. So when he was leaving Oregon and was going to transfer, he's like, I already know Coach Brad Underwood. I like what he does. Boom, went to Illinois. And he's like,
exactly,
I kept that relationship. He's like, I kept that relationship for like 2 to 3 years.
yeah. And if the kids are smart and coaches are smart, they'll do the same thing. Like don't you just can't burn bridges in today's world, right? Like there's too many connections, there's too much networking, there's too much opportunity to get back together or to work together, and coaches too, right?
Yeah.
You can't do the same thing with guys you work with either. So
No. Uh, One recruiting tool I like that Coach Bielema did. I'm friends with the coach at Mount Zion, and he said Coach Bielema came, and he goes, "But I want to be the last coach you talk to today." Like he made sure he was the last person because he's like, "I want to be the last impression." And I said, "That's an awesome tool to use."
yeah, absolutely. Anything that can set you apart, right? Anything that can give you an advantage, and it might be a conversation, it might be a personal anecdote, right? It might be a handwritten letter. Coach always talks about the power of the pen. Like how many people write letters anymore, right? Not very
Yeah.
many. And
Oh.
little things like that can go a long way. Or maybe it's a phone call. Remember, maybe you make a note just in conversation that this coach, his daughter plays volleyball or whatever it is, right? And you just any little personal thing like that, it can build a friendship and a relationship. And we've done that. I've done that. I've got numerous examples with coaches like that. There's a coach down in Florida I used to recruit in Florida back when I was at FAU. I haven't recruited Florida since 2015, and this coach and we talk every couple times a year. He's invited me down multiple times. He sends me guys, things like that. And I haven't seen him in I don't know, almost 10 years. And it's, but the friendship is very deep still. Right. And there's a level of trust and respect because we know how, he knows how I operated, how I know, what he does with his players and how he cares for them, but he also doesn't sell guys that aren't, up to your caliber. And, yeah, I think that's true with a lot. I mean, there's countless guys like that, even in Illinois that are like that. Some of my relationships with some of the schools I have are phenomenal, and
Right.
it's actually very enjoyable when you get a chance to go out. Like in May, I'll go out and that's one of my favorite 2 week spans is when I am up there in um when I'm up there in Chicago and I see one of those guys and I spend like 2 or 3 hours with him in the afternoon,
Right.
at his school, and it just builds the relationship and the bond. And he might not have anybody that year, but then in 2 years he's got a young O lineman that we're going to be in on,
Right.
So
That's why I like that's why I like this podcast because I like to talk to coaches and sometimes it's not even recruiting my kids. They're like, "Oh, your school played this kid. What did you think?"
right,
You just recruited the kid from Lyons Township. I coached against him 2 years ago. We played Lyons Township 2 years in a row, and I saw you guys recruit him. I was like, "Oh yeah, that kid is a stud for
yeah,
offense
yeah,
and defense."
yeah. Eddie Turek, yeah, we're excited about him. He really he's on defense now, but I'm sitting there watching him. I'm like, hey, you can come play guard for me too, So
Oh yeah,
it
I could tell you that he was a defensive end, and I kept watching. Like, no, he's a better offensive lineman because the way he just wants to push people. He's not about all that. I'm like, he might be an O line.
right. Right, you never know. So, and that's the thing too. There seems to be a lot more projection too now with guys that haven't played. Maybe they haven't played line, or they're growing into their bodies, or whatever it is. Defense to offense, etc. That happens more frequently now. It seems
Right? Yeah.
so.
Or like Glenbard West gets recruited a lot. We used to coach them, and I actually got messages before about what do you think about this kid? Help other schools get recruited too. It's bad. It's real bad. That's what I was going to say. I
But
help
you
our
know what though?
kids
That's
too.
good. That's a good thing too, because then you just again builds your credibility, builds your trust with a coach, with a program. Like, you guys know better than us who can play and who can't, right? Like there's some guys that'll get recruited just like get drafted because they're kind of a freak show athlete,
Uh-huh.
but they can't play,
Yeah.
right? Or that, or they'll spit the bit when it gets hard or whatever it is. Like we've had guys like that too. We've actually seen guys and got in on them, recruited them early on, offered early, and then watched them progress and end up backing out or backing away because they haven't developed the way we thought they were, or we've seen some things where it's like, you know what, that you won't make it here,
Right.
and that's okay. You just won't play here. So
Right.
that happens.
Or like even some of my kids, they're not going to go. I don't care if they hear it, Division 1, they're not going, but they can go Division 2 or whatever. And I took it upon myself now to help the head coach. I'm like, hey, I'm going to help college recruiting. So I'm like, tell me who's talked to you. And I had a kid send me this school, this school, this school. And I said, I've had coaches on my podcast from that school. Give me a second. I'll send them a message like, hey, talk to me about this kid.
Yeah,
And just because I know that coach now, and I tell the kids, I might know a coach and so tell me. And now I can tell them the real thing. And now they're asking me questions and I can give them updates. And then all of a sudden it turns into they looked at the schedule. Oh, you guys play this. We recruit this kid too. What do you think about him? You have the film, and I can now tell them about that kid also. And maybe that's bad of me, but I'm like, you know what? Kids need the opportunity if they want extra information. I'm like, oh yeah, that kid killed us, or I could be like, hey, that kid was not that good, to be honest with you. And they could
right.
be, okay, yeah, because maybe their head coach will talk him up. You get an outsider looking in, you might be like, against us, he did this, 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 and this. You better watch X, Y, and Z before you actually bring him in.
Sure, sure. Well, and again, it helps the athlete, it helps the program, it offers the bond, the relationship, and the trust, and coach to coach, and and there's something to be said, like you said, about just honesty and your evaluation, and each coach has to do their own evaluation too. But you could watch that game and be like, hey, we had to really prepare for this kid because of these things, right? And then when we got there, I didn't think he performed very well, And then now that coach goes back and says, okay, maybe he had one, did he have a bad game? Is
Mhm.
this a continual habit? Like 3 coaches have told me this kid is not very good. Well, I mean, there's a variety of things that go into that, right? And it's not like you're trying to burn somebody or
Oh,
anything else, but it's just you're being honest, and I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Because like this year, our school, we made the playoffs for the first time since 2014, which was awesome. We won the road playoff game, first one for the school since 1997 on the road for a playoff game. We get to the second round, they have like a Division I defensive end. And I'm not trying to talk bad about the kid. He was good, but I did not game plan around him. That was just
Yeah,
one of those things where I felt like we could do whatever. And we had a sophomore quarterback, second half, inside zone. We never let him keep it because he's a kid that doesn't always carry out the fakes. Or like, until you do this, we ain't gonna let you keep it. Well, it's playoffs. So I said, you gotta start keeping it. And we made him look silly. And then we
really.
blocked him one on one. I had a kid that was not as good as him, block him one on one. And I knew one of the coaches recruiting him, and I said, "Hey, this might have just been a bad game, but you better watch this film again
Yeah,
because
right.
sophomore quarterback's doing this. My senior lineman, who has no business blocking him, was blocking him. I was like, Coach, do you want to double team him?" I said, "No." Not saying I was talking bad about him, but I'm like, "Hey, I think we can do this." And so I would
Sure.
tell some of the coaches, like, "Hey, he'll be a senior next year. Just, I'll send you the film. Watch this film real quick. You make the assumption, but this is what I think."
Yeah,
And they listened to me. They're like, "Okay, well, we'll check in on it." And but it was just that was a situation where I was like, "Hey, our sophomore quarterback made him look silly, and our sophomore quarterback is not tall or anything. Like he
yeah,
would come crashing in, and then we just run right around him, and it made him look silly. He'd spin, and he did not disrupt us at all. You're on the sideline. That's a Division I kid, and
right,
you're an
right.
asshole for saying it, but you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Well, and sometimes what happens too is you see guys that maybe they have a skill set and it's pretty obvious they're just so raw and
Yeah,
they or maybe they're not coached well or whatever else and you think okay well he's got the tools I need to build on or whatever it is but when the guy has everything and is being coached well or whatever else and he's still just like you said just a guy that didn't really affect the game that's a pretty big red flag, and need to at that position, right? I mean,
mhm.
you might have a guard that is just a great player, and his effect is minimal, or at least doesn't shine like it, because the other team's got great skill or a great offense or whatever. But at some of those impact positions, if the guy's not really changing the game, then there's something there maybe to look into further, right?
Yeah, well, he had the frame. I think it was the frame. He's a tall kid, has the frame, and I'm like, oh, that's probably something they're going to use and build. Maybe he'll go to a MAC school, which is perfectly fine. But yeah, that was just exactly what you
Yeah,
said. There's probably
yeah.
something throughout the years where he did something to where they could use.
Sure. Well, and what you're seeing too is a lot of guys aren't doing their own work, right? And I say that like, it happens to us quite a bit. We'll offer a kid, and then as soon as we offer him, five other schools come in and offer that night, right? And it's or we've been on the other end of it like, occasionally, but not too often, where a kid picks up six offers in a day. Well, he posts one, and then five other recruiting departments watch him and realize he is a good player, but they don't maybe have a guy there that recruits that area. And all of a sudden he
Okay.
picked up an offer from that coach that night, and you're like, come on, man. Like
Yeah.
so that's a little bit what happens too. And things can expedite very quickly, almost exponentially, right? Like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
And then all it takes is one to kind of get that snowball rolling.
Oh, it's
So
gonna be frustrating if you did all the work and you offer, and all of a sudden you see boom, 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 boom. You're like, hold on, did all
well, especially when it's a team that has a history of paying high school kids too.
okay? Yeah,
That always angers me a little bit because I'm like, come on, man. Like but a lot of times you can kind of control the narrative there too with those high school kids. But the way you coach and the way you teach, the way you recruit and all that. But yeah, it's a cutthroat world recruiting is. You lose more friends and more respect for programs and coaches and recruiting than you do anything else.
I bet people complain about college coaches making a lot of money and what's happened. Like, well, they make a lot of money, and I'm like, I feel bad for some college coaches because you guys are now working even harder than ever before mentally too, like just mentally. So you do deserve those 2 weeks off. Like you do deserve to
Yeah.
do whatever.
Well, we work. I mean, it depends on the time of year and depends on the situation per day, but it's not unusual to work 12, 13-hour days in the off season,
Yeah,
and then have to recruit. And that's the off season. That's not even in season where it's
right.
crazy, right? And yeah, we get a couple of weeks vacation in the summertime and spring break, and that's about it, and otherwise you're on full tilt every weekend. I mean, you're subject to the requirement of the service, so to speak.
Right. Well, like you
And
said,
so that,
tomorrow Sunday, you're going in. Like,
oh yeah, I'll work all day, most of the day tomorrow, and just to prepare, and then kind of close the sub door until, we'll get Easter Sunday off, but
right,
then we'll work every day through that, and then as soon as spring game's over, when we'll be in the office, kind of prepare for recruiting, and then we're out recruiting, in May, and then official visits start, and those are becoming quicker and quicker and more and sooner, and then June with camps and everything else. So
right,
it's a year round thing. The NFL is even a little bit lighter in terms of that, because when that time is off, those coaches are usually off, or they're home by 4 or whatever. It's a different. They don't have to recruit.
right,
Where recruiting is our lifeblood. So
right. Don't worry, I defend you guys. I'm like, I talk to these guys, I understand. I'm like, I defend the coaches. They're like, I don't care what they make. Like, you earn it. Like, man, they're
oh my
earning
goodness, yeah.
it. Well,
Yeah, oh yeah, and not that other coaches don't, not that high school coaches don't, because they work, they teach. They a lot of times, most of them have a job. Their primary job is an educator, as a
yeah,
teacher, right? And so, yeah, it's almost not fair for the high school guys, but yeah, coaching's not. It's not for the faint of heart. Certainly,
no,
when and your families too. I mean, they suffer to an extent with how many hours you work, or when you're gone, or the moves, and people aren't trying to move.
no,
That's the other thing. That's kind of the argument with the portal, is like, oh, coaches move all the time. Well, some of it's they're doing, but there's also contracts involved too, and they don't just pick up and move. There's consequences for those things,
right.
right? And there's buyouts, and there's you lose money, and there's all kinds of stuff like that. And so, it's a difficult life, as you well know.
Yeah, because I do all three: football, basketball, softball. Like, it's
Oh,
non-stop.
nonstop, right? And now in your summers too. Like, everyone thinks teachers have the summers. Not when you're coaching, you don't.
No, the teachers will post stuff like, I'm on Florida or I'm in here, and I'm like, I'm at the school. I'm at the
Right.
school 7 a.m.
Every day.
Yeah. Like, I'm at weights. I'm at 7-on-7. If it's basketball, I'm at the shootout. I'm at softball batting hitting. Like, it's
Yeah.
I
Yeah. High school coaches, they're not only teachers and educators, but they're coaches, they're guardians, they're parent, father figures. I mean, they're errand runners. I mean, bed and breakfast owners. Like,
oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's everything, right? And it never stops. And we can expense some things. You guys do it out of your own pocket,
Hmm.
and your own time, and your own dollar, and everything else. Like, you're driving some of these kids to camps in St. Louis and wherever else. Well, we don't have to do that. I'm not driving those guys to the combine or anything like that. So,
And I
but
became a
it's
psychologist too for free. Like, I had
oh
to
yeah,
go
yeah,
back.
exactly
Oh,
right. You're a psychologist, a guidance counselor. There's some of that with us now too, more and more than it's ever been.
yeah.
That talk about recruiting your own players. You become part psychologist as well. And the days where you were afraid to go into your coach's office because he tell you to get out of here or toughen up or
Oh
whatever,
yeah.
that those are over, right? Like,
Oh, I
some
can't
of the
coach that way anymore. Like, you
you
can't.
can't. No, no. And now our position, I think, adheres a little bit more to that mentality
Yeah.
than most.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not dealing with defensive backs or receivers, and nothing against those positions, but stereotypically, right? Those are or kickers, or those are the guys that are always in your office talking. But my guys are too now. It's just that this era, this generation, and
Yeah.
uh, you develop such a relationship with them in recruiting, like, it's hard not to. They trust you,
Right.
right? And I think that's part of our charge as coaches, is to foster that trust, and our
Yeah.
job is to have an impact on their lives, obviously make them the best that they're capable of becoming, not only as a player but as a man.
Yep.
And then hopefully they become good men and good citizens and good husbands and fathers, and good football players, and they learn those things, and they learn those values, hopefully with their families, but then also an extension through us too.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't ever change, and I don't think that changes or should change regardless of the level.
No.
you know.
Yeah, to make you laugh real quick to slowly end it. I volunteered to go to the wide receivers this year. I was like, oh, they need a little bit more discipline. The line coach needs to go over there and I'll make it real quick. And he goes, no, you got to stay with the O line, man. I was like, come on.
Yeah, right. I don't think our receivers would want me over there.
Oh no, our senior receivers probably will want no part of me over there. Uh, go hit the sled, and they'll be like, "What sled?"
Yeah, exactly. Coach, what are you talking about? So
Talking? What's that? Well, Coach,
that's
I
funny.
appreciate you taking your time from your time off here to talk to me today. I appreciate you. I'm ready for Illinois football to be back.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Coach. Thanks. ILL.